The bridge of the Earth exploration vessel Commonwealth hummed with the sounds of a normal working day. Commander Lucas Hayes stood before the main view screen, watching the stars pass by as his ship moved through the vast emptiness of space. He was a tall man with sharp features and gray hair that showed his years of service in the military. His uniform was clean and pressed, but his eyes held the weight of decisions made and lives affected by those decisions. The Andrian Collective controlled most of this region of space. They were an ancient alliance of different alien species that had worked together for thousands of years. Some were tall and thin, others had multiple limbs, and some breathed gases that would kill any human in seconds. But they all shared one thing: they did not think much of humanity. In their view, Earth and its people were simply new children in a very old galaxy. And children should obey their elders. Commander Hayes had been sent on a diplomatic mission to establish trade routes and cultural exchanges. He had 150 crew members under his command, along with 30 diplomats and scientists. The Commonwealth was a large ship, but not a military vessel. It carried communication equipment, scientific instruments, and enough cargo to show good faith to potential trading partners. It did not carry heavy weapons or armor plating. The communications officer, a young woman named Rebecca Park, suddenly turned from her station. Her face showed alarm. The red light above her console was blinking rapidly. "Sir, we are receiving a distress call," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly as she worked the controls. Source. Commander Hayes moved toward the communications station. The other officers on the bridge looked up from their work. "It is coming from Kepler Research Station, located on the planet below the Zeta system. The signal is weak, but I can decode it," Rebecca said. She placed the audio through the speakers. The voice that came through was female, tired, and filled with fear. "This is Dr. Sarah Wells, commander of Kepler Research Station. We are under attack by Varath warships. We have 247 people here, including 63 children. The Varath have surrounded the station and are demanding we surrender all our research materials and open the outer doors. We have sealed the main entrance and retreated to the interior sections. Our power supply will last maybe 48 hours. After that, the life support systems will begin to fail. Please, if anyone is hearing this transmission, we need help immediately. The Varath do not want prisoners. They want the rare minerals on this planet, and they want all witnesses eliminated. Please respond if you can hear this message." The signal ended with a harsh static sound, and then silence filled the bridge. Commander Hayes felt something shift in his chest. 247 people. 63 children. He knew that somewhere in his training, someone had told him there were rules about this situation. Proper procedures. Diplomatic channels. Wait for authority from the Andrian Collective before taking action. "Rebecca, calculate the distance to Kepler Station," he said quietly. "The station is approximately 4 light days away at our current speed," Rebecca reported. "But Commander, our orders from the Andrian Collective are to avoid any military engagement. They have made it very clear that Earth is not to take independent military action in their territory." "I know what our orders are," Lucas said. His jaw tightened. "Send a message to the Andrian Collective Council. Tell them we have received a distress call from Kepler Station. Ask for immediate military assistance." Rebecca sent the message and waited. The response came back within an hour. It was not what Lucas wanted to hear. The council representative was a being called Nexer, who communicated through a translation device because his native language consisted of high-pitched sounds that human ears could barely process. The message was clear. The Andrian Collective would send a single diplomatic vessel to attempt negotiation with the Varath Empire. Military assistance would take time to organize, and any rushed military response might cause the Varath to escalate the situation. The Council strongly advised that humanity should accept this diplomatic approach and not attempt any independent rescue operation. The message made it very clear that Earth forces were not capable of mounting an effective military response anyway. Lucas read the message twice. Then he set it down on the command console and walked to the observation window. Outside, the stars shone bright and cold. Somewhere out there, 247 people were dying. Among them were 63 children. Kids who should have been playing and learning, not waiting to die in a station surrounded by warships. He thought about Earth, about the long history of his species. Humans had survived on a world that tried to kill them every single day. They had faced predators and disease and starvation, but they had survived. And somewhere in that survival, they had learned something that many of the older species have forgotten. They had learned that some things mattered more than rules. Some things mattered more than orders from distant councils. Lucas turned back to face his crew. "Rebecca, open a transmission channel. I want to reach every Earth military vessel in this sector." Rebecca hesitated. She knew what this meant. This was disobeying direct orders from the Andrian Collective. This was stepping outside of the rules that had been set for humanity. "Do it," Lucas said. His voice was calm and steady. Rebecca inputted the commands. The Commonwealth's powerful transmitter activated. A broad signal went out into space, aimed at every location where human warships might be receiving. Commander Hayes stepped forward to the communication pickup and began to speak. His words would travel through the darkness of space, would reach the ears of other human commanders who might be stationed thousands of miles away, who might be traveling toward their own peaceful missions in this territory that the galaxy insisted belonged to other species. "This is Commander Lucas Hayes of the Earth Exploration Vessel Commonwealth. I am issuing an emergency recall for all Earth military vessels in this sector. This is not a suggestion. This is an order backed by Earth Command Authority. A research station designated Kepler Research Station is under attack by the Varath Empire. 247 civilians are trapped there, including 63 children. The Andrian Collective has refused to provide immediate military assistance. We are mounting an independent rescue operation. All armed vessels are to redirect course immediately to the Kepler system and proceed at maximum speed. We will not abandon our people. We will not accept the death of children because a council thinks we are too weak to fight back. These are our people, and we will protect them. All hands to Kepler Station. This is a rescue mission. Come armed and come fast." He ended the transmission. The bridge went silent. Rebecca looked at him with something that might have been fear or might have been respect. Perhaps it was both. "Sir, we just defied the Andrian Collective," she said quietly. "Yes," Lucas replied. "We did. Now let us see what humanity can really do when we stop asking permission to save the lives of those we care about. Set course for Kepler Station. Maximum speed. And prepare our communication arrays to receive responses from other Earth vessels. I want to know how many commanders are willing to disobey orders to save innocent lives." The Commonwealth's engines hummed louder as the ship began to accelerate. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, human warships were receiving the same message. Some captains were shocked. Some were angry about the disobedience. But all of them would make the same choice. They would come. They would come fast. Because that was what it meant to be human. That was what it meant to be from a world that had taught its people to fight when others needed fighting for. The signal from Commander Lucas Hayes spread across the sector like a shockwave. Within the first hour, 7 Earth military vessels confirmed they were changing course toward Kepler Station. Within 3 hours, the number had grown to 12. Within 6 hours, 17 human warships were accelerating through space. their engines pushing them to the maximum speed their power systems could sustain. The battleship, HMS Valiant, was the first major vessel to arrive at the assembly point. Captain David Garrison commanded the ship with an iron will and a calm that came from years of difficult decisions. The Valiant was a massive ship, built for combat and designed to survive hits that would destroy lesser vessels. Its hull was reinforced with advanced materials, and its weapon systems were deadly and precise. Garrison stood on the bridge, watching status reports flow across his screens. Captain Elena Ross commanded the carrier HMS Defiant, a ship designed to launch and support fighter craft. She was younger than Garrison, but her mind was sharp and her instincts were excellent. She had grown up in a military family and knew warfare from childhood. The Defiant carried 48 advanced fighter craft and had a crew of 800. Elena moved through her ship with purpose, checking every system and making sure every pilot knew what was coming. Commander Kevin Burke piloted one of the advanced fighter craft from the Defiant. He was a natural pilot, someone who seemed to understand three-dimensional space in ways that other people could not. When he flew, his ship became an extension of his body. He could feel the G-forces pushing him into his seat and still manage maneuvers that seemed impossible. Kevin knew that what was about to happen would be unlike anything he had experienced before. The 17 ships gathered in space, forming into a combat formation. It was not a standard Earth military formation. Instead, it was arranged for speed and striking power. The battleships took the center with the carriers positioned to provide fighter support. The smaller cruisers and destroyers formed a defensive perimeter. Commander Hayes transmitted from the Commonwealth to all gathered ships. We have received updated information from the Kepler station. The Varath Empire has given the station an ultimatum. The civilians have 72 hours to surrender, or the Varath will begin executing hostages. They plan to take the research materials and eliminate all witnesses. We will not allow this. We will reach Kepler station in approximately 32 hours. All ships, plot your course and prepare for engagement. The Varath will not expect serious resistance. They've already decided we are too weak to matter. We will show them they were wrong. The human fleet began moving together, accelerating toward the Kepler system. As they moved, communication between the ships was constant. Captain Garrison spoke with Captain Ross about fighter deployment strategies. Commander Burke consulted with Elena about the best approach angles for his fighter squadrons. Weapons officers checked targeting systems. Shield generators were tested and retested. The Varath Empire controlled 5 warships in the Kepler system, plus several ground assault vehicles. In the eyes of the Varath commanders, this was more than sufficient to handle any potential rescue attempt. The Varath had conquered dozens of worlds. They had faced military forces far more advanced than anything humans possessed. They were certain that if a human response came at all, it would be weak and easily repelled. The Varath commander, a being called Crow, was approximately 7 feet tall with thick red skin and multiple sensor organs that gave him vision capabilities far beyond human range. He stood in the command center of the Varath flagship and looked down at the Kepler system below them. The research station was trapped. The Varath warships formed a defensive net that nothing could break through. In 72 hours, the execution would begin. The rare minerals would be collected, and the galaxy would learn what happened to those who did not obey the Varath. Communications officer interrupted Krull's thoughts. Commander, we are detecting an incoming signal. It is coming from an Earth vessel. They are demanding that we withdraw from the Kepler system immediately. Krull laughed. The sound was harsh and grating, like metal grinding against metal. Earth? Those primitives think they can demand anything from us? How many ships do they have? Preliminary scans show 17 vessels, Commander. Their power readings are lower than our single flagship. They appear to be smaller ships with less advanced weapon systems. The laughter continued. Krell opened the communication channel to the incoming human fleet. When he spoke, his voice came through the translation devices of every human ship. "This is Commander Krell of the Varath Empire. You are in Varath territory and violating our claim on this system. You have one opportunity to turn back and flee. If you do not, we will destroy your ships and add your bodies to the wreckage already floating in this region of space. This is your only warning." Commander Hayes responded immediately. His voice was cold and clear. "This is Commander Lucas Hayes of the Earth Defense Force. The people in Kepler Research Station are under our protection now. Every person down there will walk away alive, or we will ensure that your empire learns what it means to cross humanity. Stand down your weapons and withdraw from this system. You have 30 minutes to comply." Krell's laughter returned. He ordered his ships to move into attack positions and activated their weapon systems. The Varath believed the threat was over before it even began. They had fought dozens of battles and never lost. Humans were not warriors. Humans were traders and explorers. In moments, they would learn the terrible truth of facing the Varath in combat. The human fleet was still 3 hours away from direct engagement range. But as they moved closer, the Varath became impatient. The Varath ships began moving forward to intercept the human fleet at a greater distance. They wanted to destroy these inferior vessels quickly and return to their siege of the research station. When the two fleets were within weapons range, the battle began. The Varath fired first, launching long-range projectile weapons at the human formation. Commander Garrison had predicted this move. The human fleet was already moving in a defensive pattern. The Varath weapons hit shields and armor, but they did not break through the outer defensive layers. Captain Elena Ross gave the order for the first wave of fighters to launch. 48 advanced craft exploded from the Defiance launch base. Commander Kevin Burke was in the lead fighter, and he felt the familiar rush of acceleration pushing him backward in his seat. His hands moved across the control systems, and the fighter responded instantly to his commands. The fighters moved through space in attack formations, approaching the Varath warships from angles that the Varath had not expected. The Varath ships were designed for direct combat with other large vessels, not for dealing with dozens of small, fast-moving targets. Merck's fighter locked onto a Varath weapon system and fired a barrage of missiles. The explosions lit up the space around the Varath ship. 2 other fighters attacked from different angles. The Varath weapon system was destroyed before it could retaliate. The human fleet moved closer, and the real battle began. The battleship HMS Valiant fired its main weapon systems, striking the central Varath warship directly. The impact was massive. The Varath ship shook from the hit, and its shields flared, bright orange as they struggled to contain the damage. Krell realized in that moment that he had made a critical mistake. These humans were not primitive traders. They were warriors. They fought with precision and coordination. They accepted risks that the Varath would never accept. They seemed willing to die to accomplish their mission. The battle continued for 2 hours. One Varath warship was completely destroyed, split apart by a concentrated barrage from the human fleet. 2 others were severely damaged and beginning to lose power. The remaining 2 Varath ships tried to retreat from the system, but human destroyer ships cut off their escape route. Krell realized that his fleet was defeated. He activated a surrender frequency and broadcast the message to all human vessels. "We surrender. All Varath forces are withdrawing from Kepler system. Do not fire on our remaining ships." Commander Hayes accepted the surrender. He ordered the human fleet to maintain defensive positions around the research station while rescue operations began. The Varath warships, smoking and damaged, moved away from the system at low speed. The galaxy watched as the impossible happened. A fleet from a species that was supposed to be primitive had defeated the Varath Empire in direct combat. News of the battle spread through space-based communication networks. Governments that had dismissed humanity as insignificant started paying attention. Something had changed in the balance of power in this sector, and everyone knew it. The victory at Kepler Station was complete, but Commander Hayes knew that the hardest part was just beginning. 23 humans had died in the battle, and 47 others were wounded. As he moved through the corridors of the HM's Valiant, Hayes saw the cost of combat written on the faces of his crew. But he also saw something else. He saw determination. He saw the knowledge that the sacrifice had meaning because 247 people would live because of those deaths. The rescue teams descended to the Kepler research station in shuttles. The station itself was damaged from the siege. The outer sections had been hit by weapons fire, and the inner sections were filled with terrified people who had spent the last days wondering if anyone was coming to save them. Dr. Sarah Wells stood in the central command room, watching the view screen showing the human rescue shuttles approaching. She was a woman in her late 50s with dark hair streaked with gray. She had been leading the station for 5 years and had built a research team that was second to none. She had also been prepared to die rather than let the Varath take control of their research or harm the children in her care. When the first rescue team broke through the inner door, Sarah Wells felt something release in her chest. She had not allowed herself to cry during the siege, but now she felt tears forming. The rescue team was led by Lieutenant James Costa, a young man with kind eyes and steady hands. He moved through the station quickly, directing people toward the rescue shuttles. "Everyone stay calm and move in an orderly manner," Costa said. His voice was calm and authoritative, but without the coldness that the Varath soldiers had shown. This was someone trained to command, but also trained to care for the people under his protection. The civilians moved through the corridors toward the shuttles. There were scientists and technicians, but there were also families. Parents carried children. Some of the children cried from fear and relief mixed together. Costa and his team made sure each person was secure in the shuttles before the ships took off. Meanwhile, on the HM's Valiant's bridge, Captain David Garrison was analyzing the battle data with his tactical officer, Commander Philip Stone. Garrison was studying the Varath weapons patterns, looking at how the alien ships had attacked and defended. The Varath rely on overwhelming firepower and heavily armored positions, Garrison said. They expect enemies to fight in predictable ways. They are not prepared for the aggressive tactics we employed. Look at this engagement here. Their ships tried to maintain formation and concentrate fire. We attacked from multiple angles simultaneously. They could not adapt fast enough. Stone nodded. They also did not expect us to accept casualties as an acceptable cost. When one of our fighter squadrons took fire, they immediately pushed forward instead of retreating to safer positions. The Varath pilots seemed confused by our willingness to press the attack despite damage to our own ships. Garrison moved to the view screen showing the Kepler system. The Varath ships were moving away, their engines struggling to push damaged hulls through space. The Varath are soldiers who evolved in safety. They have military doctrine and superior weapon systems, but they have not survived the way humans have. Earth is a world that tried to kill us every single day. We learned to fight not just with technology, but with something deeper. We learned that survival sometimes means accepting losses to achieve victory. Above the planet, Commander Kevin Burke was still in his fighter, watching the Varath ships retreat. He had destroyed 3 Varath attack vehicles and damaged 2 others during the battle. His hands still shook slightly from the adrenaline, and his breath came in controlled gasps. The last 3 hours had been the most intense of his life. His communications system activated. Captain Elena Ross's voice came through clear and steady. "Fighter Squadron, This is HM's Defiant Command. Excellent work out there. All pilots are to return to the carrier for refueling and assessment. Commander Burke, you are cleared to land First Bay. Kevin guided his fighter back toward the Defiant. As he approached the carrier, he could see the massive ship hanging in space. Behind it, the Commonwealth and the other Earth vessels formed a protective formation around the research station. For the first time since this began, Kevin felt like they had truly accomplished something. They had defied the Andrian Collective. They had defeated the Varath Empire. They had saved 247 people. The fighter landed smoothly on the Defiant's deck. Kevin activated the power-down sequence and released his flight harness. As he climbed from the cockpit, the crew on the deck gave him a salute. Kevin returned the gesture, feeling the weight of what he had done settle onto his shoulders. In the station's command center below, Dr. Sarah Wells was reviewing the damage reports with Lieutenant Costa. The station had taken serious damage to its external systems, but the core sections where the civilians had sheltered were still operational. "How many casualties did we have among the research team?" Wells asked. 8 dead, Commander. 19 wounded. We did everything we could to protect the inner sections, but the Varath weapons were powerful. Costa replied. Sarah Wells closed her eyes for a moment. 8 people from her research family would not be going home. Their families would receive notifications that would change their lives forever. It was a terrible price, but it was not 247. It was not 63 children left as orphans. The cost had been high, but the alternative would have been unthinkable. Throughout the sector, news of the battle was spreading. The Andrian Collective's leadership received reports and began immediately analyzing what had happened. A species they had considered too primitive to matter had defeated a major military power. Not only had they defeated the Varath, they had done it while protecting civilian lives and accepting their own casualties rather than withdrawing. On the bridge of the HM's Valiant, Captain Garrison received a communication from Commander Hayes on the Commonwealth. Captain Garrison, this is Commander Hayes. I am ordering all ships to hold position near Kepler Station until full evacuation of the research team is complete. I want a full assessment of our damage and casualty reports within the next 4 hours. And Captain, excellent work today. Your tactical approach was exactly what we needed. Garrison responded. Understood, Commander. We are analyzing the Varath combat patterns now. I believe we have learned something valuable about how to counter their military doctrine. If they choose to retaliate, we will be ready. As the human fleet settled into defensive positions, the civilians from Kepler Station continued boarding rescue shuttles. Dr. Sarah Wells watched each family board, checking them off her mental list. Each name represented a life preserved. Each child represented a future that would happen because humans had been willing to fight. The battle was over, but something larger was just beginning. The galaxy now knew that humanity was not a species to be dismissed. They were not traitors who would accept the rules written by older powers. They were protectors. They were warriors. They were the children of a death world, and they had learned lessons about survival that no peaceful species could ever truly understand. The news from Kepler systems spread across the galaxy in waves. First, the data reached the major trade routes. Then it spread to smaller colonies and research stations. Within 2 days, every intelligent civilization that had any involvement with this sector knew that the Varath Empire had been defeated by a human military force. More importantly, they knew that humanity had defied the Andrian Collective and acted independently. The Andrian Collective leadership held an emergency council session. The council consisted of representatives from 17 different species, each with influence and military power within the alliance. Nexer, the being who had told Commander Hayes not to take military action, sat in the central position. Around him, the other representatives expressed their concerns. "The humans have violated direct council orders," said Vex, a representative from the crystalline species known as the Solari. "They launched a military operation without authorization. This is an unprecedented act of disobedience." "But they achieved a military victory," countered Meridian, a representative from the aquatic Deltan people. "They defeated the Varath, who have been a threat to many of our colonies. The humans did what we said we would do through diplomacy, but they did it with military force. And they did it faster and more completely than any diplomatic solution could have achieved." Naxer raised one of his appendages to signal for quiet. "The strategic reality is that humanity has demonstrated military capability we did not anticipate. Our intelligence assessments were clearly incorrect. They are not a primitive species. They are a capable military power. The question is, what do we do about it?" In other parts of the galaxy, different reactions were forming. Small civilizations that had been oppressed by the Varath for decades suddenly saw hope. The Karath species, who had lost 3 colonies to Varath conquest, sent an official message to Commander Hayes, requesting military alliance and protection agreements. The message arrived at the Fossimize, at the Commonwealth, while Hayes was reviewing casualty reports. He read it carefully, understanding the weight of what was being asked. Commander Hayes called a senior staff meeting with Captain Garrison, Captain Ross, and the diplomatic corps. Dr. Patricia Chun, Earth's chief diplomat, sat across from Hayes as they discussed the implications. "If we agree to protect the Karath, we are committing to a long-term military presence in this sector," Chun said. She was a woman in her 60s who had spent 30 years negotiating agreements between different Earth governments and organizations. Now she was negotiating the future of humanity's relationship with alien species. "We are also making enemies of anyone who opposes those we protect. But if we refuse, we are abandoning people to conquest and suffering," Hayes replied. "The Karath are asking for protection because they have nowhere else to turn. The Andrian Collective will not help them. The Varath already conquered 3 of their worlds." Captain Garrison spoke up. "The military reality is that we can maintain a presence here. We have shown we can defeat the Varath in direct combat. If we establish defensive stations and training posts, we can help the Karath build their own military capability. We will not need to be their only defense indefinitely." The meeting continued for hours. By the end, they had decided to accept the Karath Protection Agreement. This meant Earth was now a military power with formal commitments to defend another species from conquest. It meant humans were no longer simply explorers or traders. They were protectors. Within the week, similar requests came from 5 other civilizations. Each had suffered under oppression from larger powers. Each was reaching out to humanity because humanity had proven they were willing to fight when it mattered. Back on Kepler Station, Dr. Sarah Wells was being interviewed by multiple news organizations. Her words spread through communication networks. She described how the human rescue team had moved through the station. She talked about the young lieutenant who had made sure every single person was accounted for before the shuttles took off. She spoke about the commander who had defied the Andrian collectives. Direct orders because he believed that too. 147 human lives mattered more than following protocol. "The humans are different from other species we have encountered," Sarah Wells told one interviewer. Her voice was calm and filled with conviction. "They do not make decisions based purely on logic or military calculations. They make decisions based on what they believe is right. They were willing to accept losses, even willing to die, to save the people of this station. This is not something I have seen from the established galactic powers. This is something exceptional." The interview was broadcast across multiple networks. On hundreds of planets, beings of different species watched a human save people who were not human, then heard those people explain how this was different from what they had experienced before. The narrative was powerful. The data was compelling. Humanity was becoming known not as conquerors, but as protectors. The Varath Empire, meanwhile, was experiencing internal crisis. Commander Krell and the other captains who survived the battle were being investigated by the Varath leadership. How had they lost to inferior forces? How had they allowed themselves to be defeated? The answers were not acceptable to the Varath military command. Krell was removed from his position and replaced with a commander who had orders to regroup and plan a more powerful response. But the Varath knew the truth. They had been defeated by humans who fought with a desperation and determination that the Varath could not match. The next battle might go differently, but it would not be easy. The Varath had learned that humanity was not a species to be dismissed or conquered easily. On the Andrion Collective's main world, the political situation was becoming unstable. Some council members wanted to accept humanity as a full member species with voting rights. Others wanted to restrict human expansion and prevent them from becoming too powerful. Some wanted to allow the Varath to retaliate in hopes of eliminating the human threat entirely. Nexer called for another full council session. He had spent days studying data about human behavior and human decision-making patterns. He had analyzed the Kepler battle frame by frame. He had read Dr. Sarah Wells's interviews multiple times. He had reached a conclusion that terrified him and fascinated him in equal measure. The humans are not driven by profit or power accumulation like we are, Nexer said to the other council members. They are driven by the need to protect others. They will accept losses we would consider unacceptable. They will make decisions we consider illogical because they believe those decisions are morally right. This is a species that has survived an extremely hostile world. That survival has created a culture and psychology completely different from ours. Are you suggesting we accept them as an equal power? Asked Vex. I am suggesting we must, Nexer replied. If we oppose them, they will fight with the desperation of protectors. If we ally with them, they will be loyal allies. But I am certain we cannot ignore them or treat them as a minor power. The galaxy has changed. Humanity has arrived, and they have shown that they will not be dismissed. The council voted. The decision was not unanimous, but it was clear. Humanity would be offered provisional membership in the Andrion Collective. They would receive representation and would be allowed to maintain their own military forces. In exchange, they would agree to follow basic protocols and respect established territorial agreements. When Commander Hayes received the official notification of this decision, he sat alone in his private quarters for a long time. Humanity had come to the stars just as explorers and traders. Now they were military powers with formal alliances and council representation. The responsibility was enormous. The opportunity was equally enormous. He thought about the 8 people who had died in the research station. He thought about the 23 humans who had died in the battle. He thought about the future. Earth had come to a place where it could shape the outcome of conflicts across the entire sector. They would have to choose very carefully how they used that power. 3 months after the Kepler battle, Commander Lucas Hayes stood before the Grand Council chamber of the Andrion Collective. The massive room was filled with representatives from 23 different species. Some were humanoid, like the Earth delegation. Others were beings so different from humans that they communicated through devices that translated their thoughts into language the human mind could process. Hayes wore his full military uniform, decorated with the medals that had been awarded to him after the Kepler operation. He looked tired but determined. Next to him stood Dr. Patricia Chun, who would assist with the diplomatic aspects of his presentation. Behind them were members of the Earth Military Command and several civilians, including Dr. Sarah Wells. Nexer activated the translation systems. The Earth delegation wishes to present to this council. Commander Hayes, you may speak. Hayes stepped forward. His voice was calm and clear. Members of the Andrian Collective, we stand before you as representatives of a species that has recently joined this galactic community. 3 months ago, we made a decision that some of you questioned. We chose to disobey direct orders from this council because 247 people were going to die if we did not act. Today, I want to explain what that decision means about humanity and what it means for how we will interact with this council and with the broader galaxy. Hayes activated the presentation display. Images of Earth appeared on the screens. Earth at night, with cities lit by electricity. Earth during storms with thunder and lightning striking the ground. Earth with predators hunting prey in the wilderness. Humanity comes from a world that was actively hostile to our survival. Our planet has weather that can destroy civilizations. It has predators that hunt humans. It has diseases that have killed billions. For our entire history, we have had to fight to survive. This is not something that most of you have experienced. Many of your species evolved in environments that were relatively stable and safe. You developed diplomatic solutions to problems because you had the time and space to develop such solutions. Humanity did not have that luxury. We learned to fight because we had to. We learned to survive against odds that seemed impossible because the alternative was extinction. Hayes paused, letting the information settle into the minds of the alien representatives. When we received the distress call from Kepler Station, we saw 247 people facing certain death. We did not see a diplomatic opportunity or a chance to negotiate. We saw people who would die if we did not act with speed and determination. This is how humans think. This is how we make decisions. We do not ask if the situation is politically convenient. We do not ask if we have the authority. We ask if people need help, and if they do, we provide it. Dr. Sarah Wells stepped forward. She looked directly at the council, speaking from her experience in the research station. I have worked in the scientific community for 30 years. I have collaborated with multiple species. I have learned the diplomatic approaches, the careful negotiations, the protocols that govern galactic relations. But when the Varath surrounded Kepler Station, the protocols did not matter. The diplomatic channels did not matter. What mattered was that humans were willing to come and save us. Not because we were important strategically, not because we offered valuable resources, but because the humans believed that saving innocent lives was more important than following the proper procedures. Sarah looked at the children who had been in the station. Several were visible in the audience section, watching with wide eyes as their saviors were honored. These children are alive because humanity chose to act. That is what humanity brings to this galaxy. That is what makes us different. The council chamber went silent for a long moment. Then Meridian from the Deltans spoke. The Karath species have informed us that they have signed a formal alliance with Earth. 5 other civilizations have done the same. These are species that have been oppressed by the Varath and other aggressive powers. They chose to ally with humanity specifically because they believe humans will protect them. How is Earth planning to manage these commitments? Hayes responded immediately. We are establishing military training stations in the territories of these allied species. We will help them develop their own military capabilities so they can defend themselves. Our goal is not to create dependency, but to create independence. We will stand with them in direct defense, but we are also teaching them to defend themselves. This is the human approach. We protect people not by making them dependent on us, but by empowering them to protect themselves. Over the next hour, Hayes and Chun answered questions from the council members. Some were hostile, asking if humanity intended to expand its power and eventually challenge the collective's authority. Hayes answered honestly that humanity had no interest in conquest, only in preventing oppression. Others were accepting, recognizing that humanity filled a role that the collective could not fill. A protector who would act quickly and decisively when lives were in danger. By the time the session ended, the Council had formally accepted humanity as a full member species. The acceptance was not unanimous, but it was overwhelming. Humanity now had full representation in the Andrian collective and full rights to maintain military forces and make independent decisions about who they would protect. 6 months later, a monument was being unveiled on Kepler Station. The monument was made from materials that came from multiple species. The Karath had contributed crystal structures. The Deltans had provided a base made from their specialized stone. The humans had provided the inscription. The inscription read, "In memory of those who died to preserve freedom. In honor of those who chose to fight when they could have remained silent." This station stands as a symbol of the belief that all lives have value. That protection is worth any cost. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite fear. Dr. Sarah Wells stood before the monument with Commander Hayes and representatives from all the allied species. The children who had been trapped in the station were there too. Some were young enough that they had no clear memory of the siege. Others remembered everything. Hayes placed his hand on the monument. He thought about the 31 humans who had died so that these people could live. He thought about the Varus ships that had been destroyed. He thought about the future that humanity would now have in the galaxy. "We made the right choice," Commander Garrison said, standing beside Hayes. "We defied the Council because it was right. We fought the Varath because it was necessary. And now the galaxy knows what humanity is. We are the species that will fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." In the days that followed, the story of Kepler Station spread deeper through galactic civilization. The human willingness to sacrifice, to disobey unjust orders, to fight for the innocent became legendary. More species began requesting contact with Earth. More worlds requested human military advisors and training. The Varath Empire, meanwhile, was experiencing significant changes. Facing a human military alliance that was growing stronger every day, the Varath leadership made the decision to withdraw from further expansion attempts in this sector. They focused instead on consolidating what they already controlled and avoiding direct conflict with humanity. The balance of power in the sector had shifted fundamentally. The Andrian collective, which had controlled events through diplomatic consensus and slow military action, now had to account for a new player. Humanity would act quickly. Humanity would take risks that no one else would accept. Humanity would change the rules when they believed those rules were unjust. Commander Lucas Hayes never returned to simple exploration or trade missions. Instead, he became the chief military strategist for Earth's galactic operations. He worked with the allied species to build defensive coalitions. He trained their military officers in human tactical approaches. He showed them that defeating superior technology was possible if you understood your opponent and were willing to pay the cost in sacrifice. Years later, when historians would study this period, they would mark the Kepler Station incident as the moment when the galaxy's power structure changed forever. The moment when a young species from a harsh world showed the older civilizations what true protection meant. The moment when humanity proved that they were not a species to be dismissed or controlled, but for the people who lived through it. The Kepler incident was simpler than that. It was about protecting 247 people from certain death. It was about defying unjust orders because the right thing to do mattered more than the proper procedures. It was about being human in a galaxy that had not understood what humanity really was. And now, the galaxy would have to learn.